This is the Movie Channel. All movies 24 hours a day. The heart of Hollywood beats on when two mischievous children hide out in the labyrinthine passages of New York's Metropolitan Museum. Ingrid Bergman stars in the family drama, The Hideaways, next.
Greetings from Brighton Beach.
Hey, shoes on the bed. That's bad luck in a Jewish house.
It's not a Jewish house. It was built by Italians.
Where boys could be boys.
How horny can you get? I don't know. What's the highest score?
Where family meant something.
What's wrong with being in love with your cousin? Because it's against the laws of nature. You can't marry your first cousin. You get babies with 9 heads.
And dinner meant something else.
We're having liver and cabbage for dinner.
Like medieval torture.
It was a place where romance was virtuous.
Actually, I'd give up writing if I could see a naked girl while I was eating ice cream.
Parents were understanding.
Pop, I have a problem.
If you didn't, you wouldn't live in this house.
And the future had to be better.
How am I gonna be a writer unless I suffer?
Leaving wasn't easy.
No, you can't.
Jonathan Silverman and Blythe Danner star on the screen adaptation of Neil Simon's Broadway hit, Brighton Beach Memoirs, on the Movie Channel.
Tuesday. Ever since there has been Christmas, there have been Christmas stories to delight the children in all of us. Some have been cherished from generation to generation, and one will live on forever. This is the Nutcracker. The story begins on Christmas Eve. A young girl receives a beautiful toy Nutcracker who becomes a bewitched prince on whom the Mouse King has declared war. She saves the Nutcracker, and he brings her to the kingdom of toys and sweets, where she marries the prince. It's a magical journey filled with mystery and romance. It's a fairy tale that we fell in love with as children and has become a part of a Christmas tradition. With the classic score of Tchaikovsky, the artistry of illustrator Maurice Sendak, and direction by Carol Ballard, the fantasy, the music, and the adventure lives on. Relive your childhood, The Nutcracker, on the Movie Channel.
Coming soon. Stay tuned for a classic film short on the Movie Channel, The Heart of Hollywood.
Or do you just get up and say anything that comes into your mind?
Well, I usually try to make...
I seem to have taken much more interest in nature, Doctor, since you began your lectures. It's funny, but I don't know.
Yes, indeed.
What are you speaking on this afternoon, Doctor?
On the sex life of the polyp.
I think you're already, Dr. Benson.
Thank you, Mrs. Pratt. I'll be right there. Will you pardon me, please?
There you go, Doctor. Ladies, Dr. Benson.
I wonder if you'd take that. Thank you very much. Now, let's see. What have we, oh. You remember in our last lecture, we took up the subject of emotional crises in sponge life. And we saw how wonderfully nature takes care of the 1,001 things which a sponge must think of before it can reproduce other sponges. We also saw, if you remember, that a positive sponge, if mated with a negative sponge, will reproduce positive sponges, and vice versa. We also saw that this is known as Liscombe's law, so called after Professor Liscombe, who discovered it quite by accident one day in the bathtub. Now, this afternoon, we will take up certain phases of the emotional and physical reactions of the polyp, as expressed in its sex life, if you can call it a sex life. The polyp, as you know, is that tiny organism which grows under the sea and which looks something like a, well, you've seen a snail. Now, it's exactly like a snail. It's smaller than a snail. Now, a small dog isn't it either? Well, I've brought some of the little creatures here which we've been using in the laboratory, and they may serve to show what the Irishman calls the nature of the bait. Yeah, I don't seem to have got it after all. Well, never mind. I have some pictures here, which I'm going to show you later in the afternoon. Now, the only way in which a polyp resembles other animals at all is that at certain periods during its growth, it does display a sentimental interest in polyps of the opposite sex. Now, this presents a very complicated situation, as the polyp has no definite sex itself. That is, it's neither one thing nor another. By that I mean the same polyp may be either a boy or a girl, according to what or how it happens to feel like being. As Dr. Achtenholz says in his valuable book on die Weltschmerz des Polypismus, miteinander kann der Schauenstufen nicht spielen und zusammengeordnet beim Selbstmachen nicht wieder rauchen anzustellen. And this, mark you, from a man who has given his whole life to a study of the subject. Now, this tendency to change sex at any moment, while it does save the polyp a great deal of time and expense, nevertheless makes difficult any definite analysis of its sex behavior. However, Dr. Rasmussen and I made some interesting experiments along this line, and it is the result of these experiments that I wish to bring before you this afternoon. I think I'll lower the screen now, Mrs. Pratt. Well, that's more like it. In order to study the polyp at close range, which is about the only way you can study a polyp, after all, we took one of the tiny creatures home with us to live. It was, at the time, a girl polyp, so we called her Mary, after Ethel Barrymore. She was at first naturally shy, but soon grew accustomed to our mannish ways and became more like a child of our own than like a polyp. Although, of course, she looked more like a polyp than like a child of our own. It was in this way that we were able to tell the difference. Lights out, please, Mr. Cassidy. That's fine. Thank you, Mr. Cassidy. Now, here is a picture of Mary, taken when she'd been with us only a few weeks. It really isn't very good of us, taken as it was when the light was poor, and magnified about 100 times, but it may serve to give you some idea of her personality and charm. What fun it was to watch her grow, and to feel that we were having a share, however small, in her development. Along about May, we decided that it was time to make our experiment. Now, having the female, it was naturally necessary for us to provide a male. And to this end, we went to Bermuda for a few weeks, Bermuda being a great hangout for polyps. Now, here we were fortunate enough to locate a colony of the little fellows who seemed to be in good physical condition. Here is a picture that we were able to get of a group of the little fellows out for a good time. You may be sure that the lazy rogues have their fun, as who does not. It was from this aggregation that we decided to select a husband for marriage. And after a careful examination under the microscope, we decided to choose the one which you will see the third from the left in this picture. Now he's the fourth. Now he's the fifth from the left. This little chap up here in the corner tried to get away, but the camera was too quick for him. Now, having the necessary male for our experiment, we placed the two polyps in an open space behind the Princess Hotel and proceeded to await development. Here is a picture taken just before the gong sounded. The one on the right is the male and on the left the female. Unless I'm mistaken. Yes, I am mistaken. The one on the right is the male. Female, and on the left the male. What a mistake. One unusual thing about the polyp's courtship is its restraint. A polyp is only a polyp, after all, and has its little weaknesses like the rest of us. And I, for one, would not have it otherwise. But even so, the entire courtship is carried on with an open space between the male and female of perhaps 50 paces of polyp measure, which in a way makes it difficult for the male to be anything much more than just a pal. Now, the male has a rather unusual way of attracting the attention of the opposite sex, female. It was Dr. Rasmussen who discovered that during the courting season begins on the 10th of March and extends on through the following February. Leaving about 10 days for general overhauling and repairs. During the courting season, the male gives forth a strange phosphorescent glow, something like a diamond scarf pin. Now, this glow is supposed to be very attractive to the female, and it is by dazzling her with his appearance of elegance that the male is able to bring the lady around to his point of view. In order to test the powers of observation of the male during these maneuvers, we played a rather mean trick on the little fellow. We took away the original female, for whom he was so frantically flashing his gleamer, and put in her place another, but less attractive female. This seemed to make no difference at all to the male, who continued to flash on just the same. We then took away the second female and put in her place a small button, something the color of a polyp, following this with a crumb of corn bread. Now, so far as we were able to detect, this change in personnel made no difference at all to the male, who continued to exert himself, still under the impression that he was making a conquest, even with the crumb of corn bread. Now, this little ruse of ours, while it proved that the male polyp is not particularly clear as to just what it is he's after, rather put an end to our experiment as a whole. For the male, evidently disgusted at his inability to excite the button or the crumb of corn bread, suddenly gave up the whole thing as a bad job and turned into a female. Now, this left us practically where we were in the first place, with no male at all. So Dr. Rasmussen and I, after finding a good home in Bermuda for what were now our two girl polyps, returned to America, still marveling at nature's wonderful accomplishment in the realm of sex, but rather inclined to complete our experiment with some animal which takes its sex life a little more seriously.
Here are the movies you can record this weekend on the Movie Channel's VCR Theater. Friday, American Ninja. Saturday, Top Gun. And Sunday, The Money Pit. Why bother with movie rentals? Just take out a tape and set your VCR timer every night at 3 a.m. 2 Central to the Movie Channel. The perfect VCR accessory. In an ongoing series, the Movie Channel presents Critics 10 Best, featuring a critically acclaimed motion picture every Thursday night. Director Roger Spottiswoode moves into the grim world of a photojournalist in war-torn Nicaragua in Under Fire.
Is that everyone? I don't take sides, I take pictures.
The film is sophisticated, brittle, well-intentioned, and brutal. Rex Reed, The New York Post.
I think Raphael is alive. I'm gonna find him.
Your camera.
Gene Hackman, Ed Harris, and Joanna Cassidy star with Nick Nolte in Under Fire, a Critics 10 Best on the Movie Channel. Tonight.
One of the aspects about the entertainment business that's always fascinated me is the actor's bio. You know, those biographical sketches you read in playbills when you go to the theater, or when you read about a celebrity in a magazine. Well, maybe you didn't know, but every time a new movie comes out, studios pull together what's called a press kit. Complete information about the movie, who's in it, who wrote it, the name of the dog trainer, everything you might want to know about who worked in that movie. And always included are biographies of the actors in the movie, supposedly listing all the movies that this or that actor has made. Well, what fascinates me is not the rundown of those movies listed in the bio, but the movies that aren't mentioned in the bio. It's always a great indication of past work that those actors would rather have all of us forget. You can bet that future biographies of Dustin Hoffman are going to be shy about bringing up the subject of Ishtar. Lord Olivier's credit sheet often forgets he was the star of the movie called The Betsy. And biographies of Katharine Hepburn are quick to mention the comedy she did with Spencer Tracy, but they never mention the comedy she once did with Bob Hope called The Iron Petticoat. Kevin Costner is one of today's hottest young stars, thanks to The Untouchables and No Way Out. But check the Costner bio in the press kits for either of those two 1987 movies, and you will find no mention whatsoever of Sizzle Beach, USA, a movie he made for the Troma organization a few years back. And Rosanna Arquette, she is one of today's bright young comers. She is in the process of carving out a really first-rate career right now. Well, one movie you won't find mentioned in any of her bios is a 1980 number called Gorp. The reviewer in Variety called it obnoxious, insipid, terribly insulting, and morally bankrupt. It said the movie demonstrates there is no limit to bad taste. Everybody, it seems, has something to live down. Judd Nelson chooses to never mention a movie he made in 1983, in 3D yet, called Rock and Roll Hotel. It was made before the movie Making the Grade, although Making the Grade is always officially referred to nowadays as Judd Nelson's movie debut. Now, there are at least two films Deborah Winger would probably like to forget. You won't find them mentioned in any Deborah Winger biography. 1978's Thank God It's Friday, and 1979's French Postcards, neither one of which fits her image as a major dramatic star of 1987. Arnold Schwarzenegger would probably like to forget a movie he made back in 1969, long before he became a legitimate movie name. Back then, he starred in a potboiler called Hercules in New York, which was later retitled Hercules Goes Bananas. And you will find no mention of that one in any Schwarzenegger bio these days. Ron Howard, now a very distinguished director, would just as soon forget the days when he starred in a movie called Door-to-Door Maniac. Matthew Modine, with Orphans and Full Metal Jacket now to his credit, for good reason never lists the 1983 Private School on his credit sheet. But few, I guess, if any, have a skeleton in their film closet to match Sylvester Stallone. Long before his current box office status as Rambo and Rocky IV, sometime before he made his first Rocky movie back in 1976, Sylvester stripped down to the skin and bounced around in a little X-rated movie called A Party at Kitty and Studs. After Rocky came out and made Stallone a famous name, that X-rated film got even more mileage under the title The Italian Stallion. But by any name, that is one movie you won't see mentioned in any Stallone bio, not if Sly has anything to say about it. If it's any consolation, that unmentionable didn't seem to do Stallone's career any damage. But don't expect that fact to make other stars of today rush forward and confess to films they think might spoil their upper league movie image. Carrie Fisher still won't brag about Hollywood Vice Squad. Michelle Pfeiffer never talks about the Hollywood Nights. And for proof, just check the bios. I'm Robert Osborn from the heart of Hollywood.
Yeah, I guess when I see something, I go right after it.
It takes a lot more than just fancy flying.
Tom Cruise definitely has what it takes. And in December, the Movie Channel will show you why.
I love this.
He's a man's man.
I want his best game.
You want my game? You couldn't deal with my game, Jack. You're outmanned.
And a woman's dream.
You're so clever.
He's a rebel.
I don't like you because you're dangerous. That's right. I am dangerous.
And a fighter.
You cost us a game. You quit.
We didn't quit. You quit.
Check out his moves in 4 films that made him a star. December is Tom Cruise Month on the Movie Channel.
Tom Cruise is the hot new hustler in town who goes up against the best, Fast Eddie Felson.
I'm gonna beat him, you know.
What makes you so sure?
Paul Newman, in his Academy Award-winning role, co-stars in Martin Scorsese's highly acclaimed sequel to The Hustler, The Color of Money.
Tuesday.
Victorian England.
Long live Queen Jane.
A marriage of convenience, a matter of state.
I wish it, and your mother wishes it, and the king wishes it.
Promise that you'll marry him for me.
A 16-year-old girl wed to a 17-year-old boy.
Congratulations, my lord. You're going to be married.
And upon their conscience weighed the throne of England.
You sure your son's the right man for my daughter?
He can be controlled. Then it's done.
Foolish, willful, little girl.
Jane Grey and her husband must both die.
An affair of state that grew into something much more.
Fly away beyond their reach.
So far.
And their touch can't tarnish us. If you could have any wish, what would it be?
Lady Jane, based on the true story of Lady Jane Grey, on the Movie Channel.
Wednesday. This is the Movie Channel's feature presentation. This film has been rated G by the Motion Picture Association of America.